What is going on, Orlando Magic fans? You guys are back with the Six-Man Show. It is July 6th, 2020. I'm here with my co-host, Luke Sylvia. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. We're getting there. You know, we're in the month, Jonathan.
We are in the month of the NBA.
It is hopefully gonna come back. First of all, how was your July 4th? Did you do
That's what I was
anything
going to
special?
say. I hope everybody had a great July 4th. No, we didn't really do anything at all. We went for a walk, and then after 20 minutes, my wife's like, it's too hot. Let's go home. You know, my wife, she's 8 months pregnant now, and she's just like, yeah, I'm over this. Sounded like a great idea, but it was like 106-degree heat index yesterday. So we walked for 10 minutes. She's like, I'm good. So we came home, had a little nap action. You know, nothing wrong with a good nap on the
Took
weekend.
one a day.
Oh, I'm a big nap guy. Just
Yeah.
20, 30 minutes, it feels like you slept all night. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Outside of that, try to do some fireworks for, my daughter. She's 1.5 years old, but by 9 o'clock at night, by the time it got dark here, she was just over it. She could care less. So, but yeah, other than that, man, pretty good. How about you?
So on the 3rd, my wife's parents were in town, so in-laws were in town, and tried to show them kind of the city of Omaha, Nebraska, where I live, and we went to the Henry Doorly Zoo, where it's interchangeably number 1 or 2 in the country. The zoo behind it's either behind or in front of the San Diego Zoo, so they're kind of back and forth there. But we went, Jonathan. The feels like temperature, I think that day was 94. So for those of you who think it only snows in Omaha, it gets pretty hot here. Reminded me of being back home. But we thought that it would be pretty well socially distant and they'd be handling it well and whatnot. And once you got in the gates, it was fine. But when we got there, we realized, even though we reserved this 10 o'clock spot, we had no idea how many people could reserve, how many parties, whatever. We get there and the line is from the gate to the road, and it's just a far line. We sit there. People are definitely not 6 feet apart. I had my mask on tight, making sure Lauren had her mask on tight, being pregnant.
You're holding
don't need
it
any
over
COVID
her
over
mouth,
there. Yeah. We don't need you contracting COVID here. And so we tried to be very disciplined with the masks, which we were there for quite a few hours. So doing that was, man, it was rough. I was in line for 2 minutes and I just felt 2 beads of sweat running down my back.
That's the worst, dude.
It was disgusting. 2 minutes in, so we were off to a hot start.
Even when you have deodorant on, you start to get it running down the sides.
Oof.
Oh, dude. We don't have to talk about it.
That's gross. And
we don't
exactly
even have to get into crack sweat. That's the complete worst. Just saying.
You didn't have to.
I mean,
you didn't have to say it.
Yeah, no. But yeah, you're talking about sweat.
Yeah.
I mean, there's worse places sweat could be, but we're not going to. We're talking about perspiration too much. Anyways, we're talking about the zoo in Omaha.
Right. So anyway, great zoo. Had some cool interactions with watching gorillas and stuff, and it was pretty wild. But we'd been there before. It was pretty awesome though. But it was very hot. And then, yesterday we kind of just hung out, went to a birthday party for a friend of ours' baby, and then came back here and watched some fireworks from our third floor of the apartment. So it was cool. People in Omaha do fireworks unlike any place I've seen. So it was pretty crazy. A good weekend. But most of all, Jonathan, I'm ready for July 30th. I'm ready to get these games going.
We're going to get it going in Wook77. What's up in the Twitch chat, man? Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, we wanted to talk a little bit of some NBA news. Not too much Orlando Magic news. The other day, they were able to interview Evan Fournier after one of his workout sessions, and they were asking him, about if there's any pressure, heading into potential free agency this summer. And he's like, no, not really any pressure at all. I have a player option, so I'm just going to run the numbers, see what it looks like, and make my decision from there. So that's something we're definitely going to want to keep a close eye on as we get into the offseason, with everything that's going on, and see what that is really going to look like. But outside of that, Luke, not much Orlando Magic stuff going on this week.
Yeah, not too much. I know that they released a scrimmage schedule this week, and it looks like we've got Lakers, Clippers, Nuggets. Not sure if that's the correct order, but those are the teams we'll be playing.
No, Clippers, Lakers, Nuggets. You might have said that, but just to clarify.
But, yeah, so we've got those games, Jonathan. I don't think it'll harm the Magic in any way to play those guys. I've seen some hesitancy, I guess, from people and the media and whatnot, covering Orlando that say something to the extent of, like, we're not sure if that's good or bad, like, or if it's as good as people are making it out to be. But I think, me and you are probably of the same sentiment. Challenge these guys early, get us going. We don't play those guys during the season, the resumption of the season, unless we make the finals. We're not playing them in the playoffs.
Right.
So I don't think it hurts anything. You're not giving them any familiarity with you to game plan for the season really. As a result of just not playing each other. So I think it's nothing but good for Orlando. I think it'll be good to knock some rust off. It'll be good to get Markelle going against some really good players as well, and along with everybody else on the Magic. So I think it'll be very important, though, for those young guys who aren't really accustomed to the NBA life just yet, but just to see what they can do in the scrimmages. Probably won't be televised. I know there's been talk about that. I'm not sure, but that's just my guess. I just don't see them televising that, but who knows?
Yeah, I definitely think I when I saw the scrimmage schedule, I was like, oh, this is great. You know what I mean? We get to play against top-tier teams, just that measuring stick to see where we're at, where we need to get. But also, Markelle Fultz especially has played well against the Lakers this year. Everybody knows that. But like you said, there's not really any harm in it. If you beat them, that's a confidence boost, right? Man, we just beat the Lakers. We just beat the Clippers. We just beat the Nuggets. Right. 3 of the best teams in the West. And then if you lose, it was a scrimmage. It doesn't count. It's not really a big deal. But once again, it's going to give them the opportunity to see how they measure up against some of the best teams in the league. So I think it's great. I think it's good that they're doing this kind of inter-conference, these scrimmages seem to be, so that you're not really getting an early look at some of the teams that you're going to be playing against as they play the last 8 games of the regular season. But outside of that, really breaking news within the last half hour or so that the Milwaukee Bucks practice facility has been shut down due to COVID-19 exposure. So they are set to leave Milwaukee on Thursday to fly to Orlando. The team will not reconvene prior to that, Luke. So it just seems like every couple of days or every other day that there's another team that has to shut down their facilities due to COVID-19. It's just like every time this happens, I'm just holding my breath, hoping the NBA doesn't come in and say, all right, forget all this. We're going to cancel it, right? Because we've talked about it. If safety is really the number one concern, they wouldn't be playing basketball.
Yeah.
They just wouldn't. So it seems like they're just kind of seeing at some point there's got to be a breaking point, but I think that threshold is going to be pretty high as far as what they're going to tolerate for the players to to get COVID exposure. I think they're just hoping that we can get to Orlando, get everybody healthy, and then start the season and be good to go.
Yeah, and players have been testing, I believe, daily as they go into those facilities. So the only thing I hope, and I'm sure is happening, is if those guys are getting their facilities shut down, they're still having someone come to their house, test them for COVID every day leading up to Orlando. The last thing you want is your team getting to Orlando and having to stay in your hotel room for 2 days only to test positive for COVID one of those 2 days.
Right.
So I think they're being diligent. I think that they're doing what they need to do. You see some leagues that aren't doing bubbles and anything like that, but I think that the NBA is handling this the right way. There is a case to be made of maybe they shouldn't play these games because there are cases spiking specifically in Florida, I believe. So
yes, sir.
So
that is accurate.
You have to just make sure those players aren't coming in contact with a lot of people. Only thing I would be concerned with in this bubble right now is Disney employees kind of acting out of line who aren't having to stay in the bubble and somehow giving a player COVID. So hopefully that's not the case. At this point, I think we're probably in it for the long haul. I think they're pretty committed. Teams leave this Thursday, I believe. So as long as we get to that day, players can start testing. Those first couple days with those tests will be very telling, Jonathan. So we'll see what happens, but I'm more optimistic than I've been the past couple weeks just because we're getting closer to that target date.
Yeah, I don't think I'm just kind of like fearing the worst, I guess I would say. I don't think my confidence level as far as it's going to happen has changed at all, but it's just like especially like you mentioned here in Florida, we're hearing every single day that, we're new record high of all these COVID cases. So it's like, man, it's just like, I just hope it doesn't happen, but I still like, we were talking before the show. I agree with you. I feel like we're in it for the long haul, and they're going to find a way to finish out the season no matter what happens.
Yeah, but Jonathan, the most important news of this podcast, the one that I'm most shaken up about, being someone who, just like everybody else, is going to be viewing these games from home, is that it's been reported that Marv Albert will not be on staff for these games for TNT.
Yeah, that's not great. It's a problem, actually. We don't really know the specifics of why or what's going on with Marv Albert. Obviously, he's an older gentleman. He's up there in years, so he's probably being overly cautious, which definitely can't blame him for. But what did these broadcasts look like? If people are just going to be watching the games from home and they're finding a way to, bring in their audio from that, or are they bringing them into a studio and then they're kind of doing the same thing? I definitely can't imagine that they're going to be allowed to be in the bubble. So, just kind of wondering why exactly, but it's not really important. It just sucks that he's not going to be there. I mean, obviously want everybody staying healthy, and if you're not comfortable going to the bubble, then don't go into the bubble, but it's definitely unfortunate.
Yeah, absolutely is. And I see actually, I don't do this much, but in the Twitch chat, there's a comment from Wook77 that says, thoughts on Paul Porter's voice lines being used for home games, quote unquote. I mean, I love it.
No, I think it's awesome.
Give us what we can get. I don't know if many teams are even doing that. I don't know exactly. I don't even know how they're executing the Paul Porter thing. I'm guessing, like he said, his voice lines, his phrases for being the PA, and what he says, and just kind of those staples that he says. That's exactly. I think that was Paul Porter I just heard.
But no,
I think I just heard Paul Porter in the room, guys.
No,
but I think I think that it'll be good. I think it'll be fun as viewers that will probably be able to hear that PA since literally nothing else. Since nothing else, that was better. Yeah. There was nothing else going on sound wise besides players talking. We're definitely going to hear the PA. At least I hope we can.
Right. What's this nonsense about them throwing a delay on the games now because of bad language? That's not what we talked about, Adam.
Right. Where was the censoring of bad language during the MJ doc? Huh?
Exactly.
Where was it?
Exactly.
So ESPN, I know that they're going to have some of these games. ESPN probably be on board. I'm guessing that the NBA or TNT were like, no, we're not going to do that. So,
well, that's too bad. Missed opportunity.
I'm sure it was the NBA because TNT has guys like Shaq and Chuck who don't censor themselves incredibly well. So, by the way, I'm excited for that. I'm hoping that they are just going to be
terrible,
and I'm hoping they'll be in studio, together. And doing pregame, postgame stuff. I'm not sure. Have you heard anything about that? If they're going to be doing stuff for TNT?
I haven't. I really hope so. Especially like when it comes to the halftime of these games, they've got to give these guys breaks. How are they going to fill that time?
I think you might. I wouldn't be surprised if you do. You've seen a lot of late night shows do it, just everything remote from home.
Right. Why not?
I think it would be just as entertaining if you had those guys all on Zoom or whatever, third-party app to do that. So I think it would be fun. I hope they do that. I hope we get to have some more comedic relief from those guys. They're always a good time. So it would be awesome if we could get that.
All right. Well, I think that's really all that we've got for news this week, Luke. Last week we talked about. Last week, obviously, we kind of went over the bottom of the Eastern Conference, talking about the Orlando Magic, the Brooklyn Nets, and the Washington Wizards. As really, as far as Orlando is concerned, those are really the 3 teams to watch, right? So this week we're going to kind of talk about the top of the Eastern Conference. The reason that this is important is because these are the teams that Orlando will be potentially matching up against. So we're going to run through the current standings, then run through the schedules of each team. Luke and I are going to break down what we project those records, kind of how they're going to shake out, what that is going to look like at the end of the season, and then also what that's going to mean for our prediction of the Orlando Magic and who their first-round matchup is going to be. So, Luke, if you just want to start it off, just run through the standings. What are we looking at record-wise?
Yeah, so first of all, we'll get this out of the way now. Sorry to disappoint, guys. We're probably not going over the Bucks schedule. Jonathan and I both have it locked down that they're going to be the 1 seed. They're the 2nd seed, Toronto Raptors, are 6.5 games back from them. There's 8 games total. Do the math. The Bucks would have to have a catastrophe happen for them not to get the 1 seed. So it'll be Bucks in the 1 seed now and going into the playoffs. So it's going to be right now. It's Bucks, Raptors, Celtics, Heat, Pacers, Sixers, and obviously you guys know the rest of those standings. But that's what we're going to be going over today is kind of that 1 through 6 spot. Kind of the highlights of this, Jonathan, is the fact that Pacers won't have Oladipo. That obviously very much sways our predictions. Although I will say the Pacers played very well throughout the year without Oladipo. They did a lot of this without him. So We'll see how it affects them. But you do know when you get into playoff-like atmospheres, which I think that we're going to get into like we touched on last week, sooner than you would normally in an NBA season, this playoff atmosphere probably is going to be there from the jump. When you don't have those star players on your lineup, it is a completely different feel. Kind of the monsters come alive on each roster with their big stars, and the Pacers really aren't going to have much of that going into this resumption of the season. So I think it's going to hurt them pretty badly, Jonathan, not to have that. And who knows? I think they probably will give up that 5 spot to the Sixers, who will then overtake them, and they will probably be sitting at 6.
All right. Well, you're jumping ahead a little bit. We were going to break down the records and whatnot and go from there.
You know, Jonathan, I don't think it should surprise too many people that we have
I
the Pacers
understand
below. So, right now they are tied, the Pacers and Sixers. They have the exact same record. So, you look at those rosters and you got to think that the Sixers are going to have a little bit of a leg up for that. But we can go ahead and go from the top, Jonathan, if you want. We can start, with the Bucks. Like I said, that's probably just going to stay. We really don't have to touch on that much. And then, talk about what we think can happen in that 2-3 spot, because there's definitely some interesting stuff there with the Celtics only being 3 games back from the Raptors.
Well, this is the thing with Milwaukee, being up, they're the number 1 seed. Everybody knows that right now. They're 6.5 games up on the Raptors. So with 8 games to go, Milwaukee only needs to win 2 games, and then it's impossible for the Raptors to catch them. So Milwaukee would have to go 1-7. Toronto would have to go 8-0. And that's just, I just don't see that happening. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, I mean, I could ask you, but I've got Milwaukee. They're either going, 7-1 or 6-2. I think they're just going to drop a game somewhere. So they're going to. The schedule breaks out like this: Boston, Houston, Brooklyn, Miami, Dallas, Toronto, Washington, Memphis. The one game I have them dropping is going to be that game against Toronto, because at that time they'll have the number 1 seed locked up.
Yeah, I could see it. Nothing probably will surprise me when it comes to the Bucks, and if they drop something because they're so far ahead and they're resting Giannis and those guys.
Right.
So yeah, I think I'm pretty much on board with you, Jonathan, with that prediction, kind of their ceiling and their floor of losing maybe 1 or 2 games.
So next up, we've got the Toronto Raptors. So they're going to start the season. Tough matchup. What's going on, George, from Orlando Magic Nation in the chat, man? Thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate that. But Toronto gets right to business against the Los Angeles Lakers. Then they play Miami, the Magic, Boston, Memphis, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, and then they finish with Denver. Luke, how are you feeling about the Toronto Raptors?
It doesn't start easy for Toronto. Lakers and Heat, both not a cakewalk. The Magic, not a cakewalk. So I do have them beating the Magic, and I think that's going to be probably their first win of the resumption of the season. I've got them taking an L to the Lakers and the Heat. and eventually, dropping games to the Bucks and the Nuggets there at the end. So right now I've got their record hovering at about 4-4 for the Raptors.
Yeah, I actually kind of the a little bit different though. I've got them losing to the Lakers, obviously the first game, picking up wins against Miami and Orlando. Losing to Boston, beating Memphis. I had them beating Milwaukee, but then losing to Philadelphia and Denver there. So, so I mean, I think 4-4, 3-5 is probably what they're looking at. Just because there's really no rhyme or reason to how these games are going to go. Right, they're going to be largely pickup games. But even with that, they've got a 3-game lead on the Celtics there. So I'm gonna say that Toronto stays at the second seed, and if everything shakes out the way that we want it to, it's gonna be pretty interesting for the Magic.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Celtics. If we want to jump down to their schedule for the resumption, it's starting off. Also, much like the Raptors starting off against a team they probably wouldn't want to, they're not easing into anything. The Celtics starting out against the Bucks, so I have them taking a loss there. I have them beating the Blazers, beating the Heat, beating the Nets, losing to the Raptors, beating Orlando, Grizzlies, Wizards. So I have the Celtics actually finishing the season. Those 8 games, I have them at 6-2.
So I actually went 5-3 with the Celtics. So definitely loss against Milwaukee. I feel like they're gonna beat Portland. Then I think they'll probably lose to Miami. I think they'll beat Brooklyn, lose to Toronto, but then finish out with wins against Orlando, Memphis, and Washington. So, I mean, pretty close once again. 3 games back of Toronto right now. I just don't think they're going to be able to make up that much ground.
Is it 3 or 3.5? Do you know?
No, it's solid 3 games. It's a solid 3 games.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So.
It's going to be interesting. I think these could go either way. It's kind of crazy to think about if the Raptors, drop another game or two, and the Celtics actually perform to what I have them predicted as. We could get it could get interesting near the end. It's going to come down to kind of those last few games, and the Raptors, they've got Bucks, Sixers, Nuggets, which is a much harder schedule than what the Celtics have to finish the year, which is Magic, Grizzlies, Wizards.
You did not throw the S on to the end of
Magic. I was talking too fast. All right, don't do this to me.
No,
I shouldn't have stopped. But I mean, Jonathan, if you look at that, the end of those schedules, if the Raptors and Celtics start slow or something happens, that'll be pretty interesting to see. Obviously, I mean, I don't know what your opinion is, but would you rather play the Raptors or the Celtics?
Part of it is just because and it's tough, right? Because it doesn't look like there's going to be any Jonathan Isaac, which is really, really disappointing. Because if you're telling me that we're running back essentially the same series as last year, round 1, but you're removing Kawhi Leonard, I feel pretty good about that, right? Especially if, Aaron Gordon and Jonathan Isaac's main job is going to be to try to slow down Siakam. He's still going to get 20 a night or whatever. But if you can get guys like Markelle Fultz going, Evan Fournier, Vucevic, Ross, and then just get anything offensively out of Aaron Gordon, Jonathan Isaac, DJ Augustine, those guys, I feel like we have a really good shot against the Raptors. But being as how it doesn't look like there's going to be Jonathan Isaac, we just still don't know. My heart says no, but I'm just leaving out that little bit of hope that he will be able to return. We know that he's back, in the Magic practice facility, rehabbing. It was just, a month ago that he was running on the anti-gravity treadmill.
Yeah.
So the first time that he's been running, but we still have another basically 4 weeks from now. So I think Toronto, Boston, I just feel like Boston has 4 legitimate weapons, 4 guys that really could be all-stars. When you look at Kemba Walker, Gordon Hayward, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, still got guys, like Marcus Smart, Daniel Theis. Boston scares me a little bit more than Toronto does. Toronto, you could argue, plays better together as a team and as a unit, But when you're talking about pickup games, Luke, I don't know about you. When I'm at the rec playing pickup games, I'm trying to pick up the best players to be on my team.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to a pickup game, usually the talent wins out.
Yeah, I mean, like I talked about earlier, this kind of carries over. In the playoffs and come that postseason intensity, you need those guys, those stars that are able to step up and take over a game at a moment's notice. I mean, if you're the Celtics, you've got guys like Kemba, you've got guys like Jason Tatum, you even got guys like Gordon Hayward, who these guys can take over a game at a moment's notice because they've been there before, especially when I talk about guys like Gordon Hayward and obviously Kemba being the sole guy on the Hornets for so long. I think that would pose more of a threat. The Raptors, they don't have Kawhi anymore. I think that we would probably match up better with them. Obviously, Siakam poses a much greater threat against us if we don't have J.I., which, like you said, it's seeming like we're not going to have him. But if we did, whole different story, Jonathan. My attitude completely changes. But nevertheless, I'm still hoping that we get the Raptors. I'm hoping they don't mess up in these 8 games that they have back. And I'm hoping that the Magic can capitalize on their 8 games and move to that 7th spot, and we can just get a rematch of Raptors and Magic without Kawhi Leonard, please.
Well, thankfully that's impossible, right? Like, I don't even know what would have to happen, but just
hey, it's
please.
2020.
Yeah.
Anything can happen.
Hey, Kanye's running for president, so
Kawhi just walks out in a Raptors
we thought it was
going
to be a joke, but here we are. Anyways, let's not get into politics. Let's move it on to the Miami Heat. When it comes to the Heat, Luke, I've got them going 4-4. So their schedule looks like this: Denver, Toronto, Boston, Milwaukee, Phoenix, Indiana, Oklahoma City, and then Indiana again. So I have them losing the first 2 games, Denver, and then Toronto, picking up the next game, winning against Boston, losing against Milwaukee, wins against Phoenix and Indiana, a loss against the Oklahoma City Thunder, and then they pick up that final game and beat the Indiana Pacers.
Yeah, I have them actually. Let's see, I have the Heat going 5-3. So I have them dropping that Nuggets game, winning Raptors, loss against Celtics, loss against the Bucks, beat the Suns, beat the Pacers, beat the Thunder, beat the Pacers again. So I've got them at 5-3. So as you can see right now, really isn't too much shake up here at the top. Although like I said, wouldn't be completely insane if the Celtics do end up somehow jumping the Raptors either. So there's some drama that could happen at the top with those 2 and 3 seeds, but hopefully not.
You don't seem to be too high on the Raptors.
I'm not.
Drop the take. Lock and load.
I mean, I don't know. It's just obviously last year with Kawhi was a whole different story, but with the Raptors this year, I mean they're obviously a great team. They've only got 18 losses. But I do think it's a whole different thing when it comes to playoffs. A lot of those guys, guys like Fred VanVleet, who kind of take that step up and are due for a paycheck coming soon. Those guys have that playoff experience. But I still don't know about the Raptors. There's a lot of I'm not sure why. Like, it's one of those things that I really can't pinpoint exactly why.
You're not high on skinny Marc Gasol. Marc Gasol's losing a lot of weight.
That's insane. Him and Jokic, right?
Yeah.
So
oh my gosh.
They're both big men just losing weight. So that'll be interesting to see what Marc Gasol, if he changes his play style at all, if he's able to kind of.
Is he going to be able to handle Nikola Vucevic?
Okay. All right. I think he will be just fine, but
that's a legitimate question. Don't brush it off. Don't roll your eyes.
Is that a legitimate question?
Look, he completely embarrassed Vucevic in the playoffs last year, right?
Yeah.
But, I mean, maybe losing 20 pounds, Vuce will be able to be a little bit more physical, move him out of the way, get to the basket. I'm being hopeful here. Don't kill my hope.
I'm sorry.
Don't be a killjoy.
I might have to be here. I don't see a world where Vucevic gets the best of Marc Gasol. Last year really took the wind out of my sails. Going into that series, I just remember thinking, it shouldn't be bad. Like, Vucevic is an all-star, right?
It's
Gasol and it's
Valanciunas. Just give him so many problems.
Oh, it was gross. Hard to watch, as every Magic fan knows. But nonetheless, we'll jump into this next. We getting into the Pacers now.
Yeah, go ahead.
So for the Pacers, I've got them going 4-4, losing to the Sixers, beating the Wizards, Magic, Suns, Lakers losing to the Heat, losing to the Rockets, and then beating the Heat at the end of the season. So I've got them going 4-4.
So I've got them going 3-5. They dropped that first game against Philadelphia, but then they pick up 3 straight wins. Washington, Orlando, Phoenix start feeling really good about themselves, but then to end it, 4 straight losses: Lakers, Miami, Houston, Miami, and that is actually going to be enough, as we've talked about a little bit earlier, and we'll talk about the 76ers in a moment, but it's going to be just enough for them to drop down to that 6th seed.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got the Sixers right with them, they're tied, and like I said, and we're gonna have the Sixers end up jumping them. But yeah, Pacers go 4-4, and the thing is, I don't think it's impossible that the Pacers hold that 5 spot, because like I said, majority of the year they played without Oladipo, so they know what it's like. This won't be uncharted territory for them. So they could hold on to that spot. We could see the Sixers. I mean, the Sixers really underperformed this year. When you look at them being the 6th seed, they, like I said and have said many times on this podcast, they struggle on the road. And who knows what these factors of being at Disney and the guidelines, following the rules, if Embiid might struggle during the games for whatever reason, for the same reasons he might struggle on the road. Not his home court, not the same feeling. So who knows?
Best home record in the league this year.
And exactly. But the thing with the Sixers is, near the end of their break, or near the end of the break that we didn't know was coming, they were dropping games to teams who are sub 500 teams, who were essentially just lottery teams. They were dropping games to those guys, as well as losing on the road all year. So to have the best home record and be a 6th seed, that speaks to how just terrible they were on the road. So there's a lot of factors, and that is why I say I wouldn't be too shocked if the Sixers stay at 6 and the Pacers stay at 5. But I do have the Sixers stepping up to the moment and going 5-3 and jumping the Pacers. But largely this has to do with what the Pacers do and how they react without having Depot. But I can see a world where where those things happen both ways. So I'm not too confident that it will end that way, but that is what I'm predicting.
Yeah, I think I definitely would be, a little bit shocked if Indiana is able to hold on to that 5 seed, just because of the fact that, like I said, I've got Indiana going 3-5 over the next 8 games. I've got Philadelphia going 6-2 as we look at their record, and we look at their schedule here. So they start off with the Pacers, but then the Spurs, the Wizards, Orlando, Portland, Phoenix, Toronto, Houston. So as we look at these teams, going into this bubble, it seems like a lot of teams have a really, really tough schedule, where if you look at the 76ers, it's kind of favorable, right? Like Indiana, I expect them to win that game. San Antonio, who just has not been the Spurs this year, I think they'll win that game as well. Washington, who I think is really just going to roll over, you and I have talked about in this bubble. But then Orlando, Portland, Phoenix. So we're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these teams that they're playing really are, have the potential to not even make the playoffs.
Right. Yeah. Also, something kind of, I don't know if it's breaking, but it's something that Spencer Dinwiddie put out. I have his tweet notifications on because we don't know if he's going to, be playing. We assumed he wasn't, right? And still I'm kind of assuming, I'm not too optimistic that Spencer Dinwiddie would be out on the court. But he said, day 10 update. Sinus pressure headaches when I get up are starting to subside, but I was a little too bullish on the bike. Got dizzy and felt weak. But if I can get a negative test tomorrow, they're going to get me back on court Tuesday.
All right. Not great for the Magic, but
not great. But news is news, and that's something that the Magic will have to game plan for, whether they like it or not, is, with the Nets being on our schedule,
twice.
Dinwiddie being, twice. So you've got a lot of people replying to him saying, sit out, you don't need to play. that type of stuff. So it'll be interesting. They said if he tests negative for his next test, they'll get him back on the court Tuesday. So that's going to be kind of news that I'm sure we'll cover in the next pod if Spencer Dinwiddie will be back.
Yeah, if he sits out, you could just like send us the check for the 7th seed because it's a wrap. It'll literally be Karis LeVert and Joe Harris that will have to lead them, to a better record than the Orlando Magic, and I'm not really all that confident in it.
If he plays, do you change your prediction that we set last week? Does it change a lot?
Not really, to be honest, because last week I've kind of always had the feeling that he was going to play. He just seems like a guy that is going to play if he's able to play. But, we've heard the news that obviously, DeAndre Jordan, he's not going to be playing. I think that's a pretty big loss, especially for their second unit. Jarrett Allen is obviously a stud, but DeAndre Jordan has been a really great defensive player in this league for a really long time. But, no, I don't think it really changes whatsoever for me. I think I had the Nets going like 3-5 or something like that. With the Magic going 4-4, so just barely able, to squeak past them for the 7th seed. If Dinwiddie doesn't play, I'm probably going to drop that down to like 2-6 or keep it at 3-5, something like that.
Yeah, so that's something to look for if you're a Magic fan, being that is one of the teams that we will play the most of in the resumption of the season. So something to look out for. But anyway, we can get back into what we were talking about. Just figured I'd bring it up because it popped up. So just talking about that Sixers Pacers thing, and I think we pretty much well wrapped up that subject. But end of the day, won't be surprised either way, I don't think.
Yeah, so I mean, just to kind of recap, I think the only movement that I have and that I'm pretty comfortable saying is going to be that Philadelphia jumps Indiana and Philadelphia gets to that 5th seed. I think everything else is really going to stay where it is. I think obviously between 1 and 2, there's just too much space. Between 2 and 3, I think there's just enough space, for Toronto to hold on to the 2nd seed, leaving Boston as the 3rd seed. And then Miami, I think they're going to stay right where they are. Once again, I think Orlando's going to jump Brooklyn. So, Luke, I think we are going to get that Toronto, that matchup in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, that would be big, but looking at these standings of what you have after the prediction with not too much movement besides Pacers and Sixers, is there a matchup in your notes that stands out and one that you would like as not as a Magic fan, as a basketball fan, to sit down and watch that series?
Yeah, for me, it's going to be Miami and Philadelphia, 4 and 5. 100%. I mean, the return of Jimmy Butler to Philadelphia, and then out of the first round matchup of the East, I feel like those are just the two teams that you could tell me either one of those teams wins the series, and I would believe you. Outside of that, I mean, we'd be looking at Milwaukee and Brooklyn. That's a sweep. We'd be, Toronto and Orlando. I think that could be a really, entertaining series. And then we're looking at, Boston and Indiana. And I think Indiana probably could put up a good fight, but I think I would pick the Celtics in probably 5 or 6 in that series pretty easily.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. Obviously, I'm with you on the Heat Sixers. They're two teams that they have a lot of parallels with how they perform home and away. Both of them have incredible home records, atrocious away records. So it'll be interesting to see what they can do on a neutral court with no fans and nothing to distract them. So it'll be interesting if we do. I'm rooting for that matchup. I'm hoping there's no movement there in the regular season, and I hope we can get that matchup. I like you said, I'm not surprised either way of who wins that series. I would probably go with the Sixers, just because they had that playoff experience last year. They've been together longer. But it would be interesting to see that storyline with Jimmy Butler going back to Philadelphia.
Yeah, you got Jimmy Butler going back to Philadelphia. You got Josh Richardson going back to Miami. There's bad blood.
We're saying going back like they're actually going to go there, but they're just playing against them.
Oh, that's right. See, that's the crappy thing about this. You forget all that stuff.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that we don't get to see them play in like those environments they were just playing in the year before. But yeah, it's just going to be
my brain was trying to
thing.
Escape reality for a moment, and you just kind of lassoed me back in.
I can't blame you, but I caught myself and I was like, wow, they're they're
not
really
really
not
going
going to be
back.
going back anywhere. They're just going to be in the same hotel together and playing each other. So,
Well, really, what
yeah,
I was referring to is like Josh Richardson's going to be playing against like his former teammates.
Right.
Jimmy Butler's
Yeah,
going to be
no,
playing
we-
against his former
we-
teammates.
listen,
there's a little
we
bit
know
of
what
bad
you-
blood there.
we know what you meant, and yeah, I mean, that's going to be a dramatic series. I do wonder if there will be more or less, kind of just like refs having to step between players with there not being fans. I can't help but think that when there are fans, the crowd kind of plays into it. And if you hear that crowd get loud when something starts, when a player fouls a player or pushes a player, if we're going to have those same intense interactions, will they spike and will they increase, or will they decrease with a lack of fans there?
I think there'll probably be less, just because, like you said, there's not the fans there to kind of antagonize everything, and guys
Right.
also kind of realize, the ramifications of not only the coronavirus and everything, but the social injustice, platform and the message that they're going to be trying to put forth. I also feel like a lot of guys are going to kind of maybe put their egos aside and just be happy to be playing basketball again. But I mean, you got a guy like, Tyler Hero, who sometimes can be a little bit of an instigator if you ask Michael Carter-Williams, or like especially like a Patrick Beverly. Beverly, you could bet your life savings on the fact that he's going to be getting into something.
That's his thing. He has to. He's not Pat Bev if he doesn't get into altercations with players. That's what he's there for. He's a pest, and that's his job. Fans or not, like, that is how he's gonna play, because that's his role. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see. I think once we get into the postseason, not that they'll forget about, the things of being able to wear social injustice phrases on their back, which all got approved this past week. I think there was like quite a few different phrases that they could use on their jerseys, but I think that's only for a limited amount of time at the very beginning.
I think 4 games.
Yeah, so I think come postseason, we're gonna see, it might get a little ugly. I'm interested to see, because like you said, it's pickup games essentially, but with refs and the guys that you played with for a while now. But there still is that thing. Pickup games I feel like are a little different, because you're just with those guys, and it's pretty like intimate in that way, that there's no fans around, there's no people watching, and I think it might be easy to exchange words and then get your pride hurt a little bit and go at them. And come postseason, I think that's when we'll see it. Maybe not so much in the first part of the regular season, because like you said, they'll be happy to be back. But I'm interested to see when the postseason, especially, what happens.
Yeah, everybody talks a little bit of trash when you're playing pickup. Nothing wrong with that, but it'll definitely be interesting to see if any of that kind of escalates any further than that. So I think, but that pretty much wraps up, what we are going to discuss as far as subject matter this week. Next week, I think we're going to break down, most of the Western Conference. Luke, I'm really excited to talk about the West, because just looking at the standings, really outside of the 1-2 seed, I think the Lakers pretty much have it locked up, much like the Bucks. But just 2 through, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, it seems like there's a lot of room for movement there. So definitely excited for those guys to get back to playing basketball. But it's going to be exciting to talk about next week.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, there's a lot of the closeness there in the standings. You've got that game and a half between 2 and 3, game and a half between 3 and 4. One game total between 4 and 5 and 6, because Houston and OKC have the same record right now. And then you've got Dallas, and that's kind of, it drops off after that, and you kind of start focusing on who's going to get that 8 spot between Memphis, Portland, and New Orleans, and the Kings, for what it's worth, and the Suns, for what it's worth. So a lot of closeness there. A lot of things that we'll be able to get into, Jonathan. Much like this week, we will break that down, and then talk about the series that we'll be looking forward to, based on kind of what we predict. Might not get too specific about the regular season games. Might just give you guys our predictions instead of really going game by game, because there are so many teams. But it'll be fun to kind of see what we end up with going into next week's show, and what teams that we can expect to play against each other, and kind of storylines there.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be awesome to see, especially when you look at like the difference between the 3 seed and the Houston Rockets, the 6 seed. It's just 2.5 games, so it's going to get crazy. It's going to be it's just going to be good to have basketball back. Luke, you got anything else?
Nope, I think that's it. Hope you guys had a good 4th of July, and we'll catch you guys next week.
Absolutely, America, baby. I posted on social media. There's a lot of flaws in this country, obviously. But regardless, I'm still proud to be an American. I still think it's the best country in the world to live in. But we definitely need to fix some things. But one thing that's getting fixed pretty soon is we're getting basketball back. So we'll be back next week, guys, every single Monday throughout the rest of the season and the off season into next season. So thank you guys so much for listening to the Sixth Man Show. For Luke, this has been Jonathan, and we will catch you guys next time. See ya.